What is up? All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Sales Lab podcast. Today, we are joined by the mustache legend that is Hector, who is the CEO and founder of Fluenza, which is a influencer platform, right, mate? Am I correct in describing it like that, or?
Yeah, I think it's such a tough one whether you describe your company as where you're going or where you're at currently. But the way I
Yeah.
describe it currently is we're like a tech-enabled agency, but where we're ultimately going is a marketplace where companies will be able to control their B2B media spend.
Nice.
Which, yeah, it's a lot of different product and plethoras and things like that. But for the moment, I think influencer platform agency is probably the easiest way.
Nice. And so I don't know if you've seen my post today, but I had Adam Robinson on the podcast recently, and he, funny enough, is doubling down quite aggressively on this theory of like inbound led outbound, which essentially is all around like creating like a content machine. And you're pretty before we go into like the influencer stuff, like you're pretty active on LinkedIn. Are you uh well, not only are you active on LinkedIn, right, but you also used to be a seller, like you used to be a founder, you've started a few companies, you're an investor in the revenue, so you live in the sales space, right? So I guess my question for you is, are you seeing that sales is going down that trajectory of everything has to be quite content orientated? Sellers and account executives need to be quite heavy on kind of content to generate pipeline. Where do you stand on that kind of theory that it needs to be kind of in outbound or inbound led outbound effectively?
Probably going to say some stuff that's not very popular for our audience, but the SDR model is ever changing. If you look at the data of like RepView announced last year in 2023 that only 25% of reps hit quota, and this was a pro rata change after like when I was an SDR, I was 20 meetings booked a month. Then pre-COVID, I think it lowered to maybe 18 meetings.
Yeah.
COVID happens, everyone doubles down on email and just starts bashing inboxes. Then lots of companies close, the market crashes, PE funds start slashing funds of funds, so like investing in VCs. This trickles down, affects valuations. Ultimately, it's harder to raise capital, which means they can't invest into other products. Anyway, it's a whole thing. But what this ultimately led to is companies have less budget to be able to buy new technology. Like 2015 to 2018, selling software, which is when it was great. I could have a conversation and sell something like that, and it was fantastic. Now, there are more people out there than in a buying committee. There's more complex sales cycles. And so if I'm thinking about how it's changed, top of funnel, it's harder than ever to stand out because people have basically just annihilated every different channel that's available.
Hmm.
There's also the to be able to create a competitive company in the market, whether it's a AI-based solution or even a SaaS product, there are so many no-code tools. Like
Yeah.
if you look at how many email sequencing solutions are, like thousands. If you look that up,
Thousands.
thousands, yeah. And so when I'm a buyer, if I've got an option of 1,000, if I need an email sequencing solution, and I've got 1,000 emails in my inbox, how do I make a purchasing decision? And the first thing I do is I go and chat to my mates, and I go in my WhatsApp group and say, "Hey, I need this. Is there anything else?" And they'll suggest a
Yeah.
couple of names. Maybe I take a couple of demos. Maybe I go through to buy something. The other thing they do is, okay, who is a revenue leader who I really respect in the space, and what kind of solutions are they talking about? What do they use at Meta, Google, wherever else it is? Because if they've got procurement teams, they've probably gone through a whole process. If I make purchase that solution, it's probably a good bet. And so what you end up seeing is that the way the market's changed is it's harder than ever to stand out. There's a lot of people doing the same thing. And so influencers, interestingly enough, is one of the best ways to help your top of funnel build buyer trust and also engage in audiences that you wouldn't necessarily have access to. The other Sorry, I'm splitting the answer to this question in kind of three different ways.
No, I like
The other, the other way is, okay, so you have internal, that's external advocacy,
it. Yeah.
which is I leverage the trust of someone else. You then have employee advocacy. So I think it was 2 years ago, Cisco invested nearly $50 million in creating 10,000 influencers. It was a huge program. It was absolutely crazy.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Google it. It's really interesting. And so they really doubled down on this idea. And after about a year, starts working. All their employees, like there are obviously a couple of standouts who are clearly resonating better. And it was a really big bet. Obviously, $50 million even for a company that size is still like
Yeah,
a significant chunk of change.
yeah,
And started pumping out content, creating thought leaders left, right, and center. And when you're talking about the deal sizes over a 2 year lifespan, the CMO at the time was, saying it was one of the best investments they ever made. Like very big bet though. The final piece is okay, creating content for just in general, like blogs, case studies, SEO, landing pages.
mm,
That always helps, right? But I think the differentiating factor that I'm kind of predicting and seeing now is one is user generated content, which can come from your employees or external.
yeah,
And then the other is if you, the Udi Lengor, like Gong CMO, famously said, create content that's so good, people should pay for it, but it's free. And if you take that very literally, because with the birth of GPT, I can put in some prompts and start spitting out blog posts to hammer SEO, and
mm,
it's harder and harder. Whereas you need to now create content where people are actually going to read it, reuse it, and hang around. So provide really good insights. So obviously, Gong Labs has some of the best data available for salespeople to get their pitches better. And so those are the in a very roundabout way, those are the three things that I think are really important when it comes to content creation moving forward. Yeah.
yeah. Interesting. And so, I mean, would you then say, like, if I was like an inspiring SDR or AE, should I start hitting LinkedIn with some content? Should I not?
Yeah, because then you can monetize it through us. A more serious answer would be, yeah, absolutely. Why wouldn't you? I mean, um, it's never too late to get in the game. Like people who join YouTube, for example, start creating videos. The new wave of TikTok influencers that happens like every 3 months. There's some breakout person who people really like. And ultimately, if you're a salesperson, it's just going to help you close more deals.
Yeah,
Some people, especially because we're British, at the end of the day, might find it a bit cringe or like weird that you're talking about like sales strategy on LinkedIn, which I totally get. But to those individuals, I say you're missing out on like really easy conversations with people, and you might, if you create this content well enough and apply yourself to it in a very deliberate manner, then not only will you actually start generating deals, but you can get opportunities that you would have never had otherwise. And I'll dig into that more in a second. But I think the other thing is if you are creating this content and documenting your journey, whether you're a first time AE, SDR, or whatever, as well as a level of vulnerability,
yeah,
getting deals. It teaches you the art of writing, which is applicable everywhere. And opportunity wise, I mean, look, you've got a pretty substantial following. Like I've met I've been put in rooms that there's no way I should be in, purely because people think I'm either cleverer or more established or more successful than I am. And it's
yeah.
just because I've got lots of followers on LinkedIn and I write pretty frequently. I mean, what about you? What's been your experience?
I mean, it's I do find it corny to like say, but like the more followers you get, the more the doors just open. Not only on like getting in the room, it's also like it's crazy to see like the opportunities that Triggerfy gets as a result. And I'm not talking about like meetings. I'm talking about like partnerships, like brand partnerships that we can get, like integrations into Triggerfy, like, and then the deals on those partnerships that we can get purely because they'd be like, hey, well, also could you start? We'll get you in the platform, but they almost don't really care about that. It's also like, can you post about us as we're getting you in the platform as well? And it's just yeah, I mean, it's just quite interesting, like what it can do. And I was actually funny enough chatting with our CTO, and I just said, doesn't matter how good your tool is. Almost if you have a brand, it's almost more powerful than the tool itself in a weird way. We've had people like, the funny thing is we've got people talking about how good we are. They've never even used us.
Yeah.
This is like it's such a crazy concept. But that's kind of, I guess that's both like the power of the brand, and also I think the scary part about influencer marketing is, do you think that, and by the way, we don't use influencers with Triggerfy, but do you
Not
think
yet,
that
you
people are
don't.
gonna, not yet, we don't. Yeah. Do you think that people are going to start to become like desensitized? Because there's definitely that desensitization that's happened across like Instagram and TikTok with influencers.
Oh, that is a very good question. So one is that this specific market is so early that it's hard to tell. But from what I've seen of how B2C influencer marketplaces has happened, it took a very long time for that to be the case. And even when you say that, it still hasn't been desensitized. Like, to be totally honest with you, like if I think about, right, Mr. Beast, one of the first YouTubers, been around for probably 12 years now.
Yeah.
And he's landing $5 million brand deals left, right, and center with Shopify and Surfshark and all those people, and they keep renewing his license, so it's obviously working for them, right?
Mm.
And I think the other thing is this kind of comes down to the difference between B2B and B2C is the artistry of a B2B influencer. If you're B2C, you're an attractive woman on Instagram and you, I don't know, do some form of dance or take pictures holding various makeup products or whatever, right? That's they're taking a photo with a product, and they get an affiliate link, they click on it, they buy it. The buying decisions that people are making off these influencers, all right, are very expensive. It's like, okay, do I sell 1,000 lipsticks or do I sell one $60,000 license of some software product?
Mm.
And so, whilst the top of funnel stuff, okay, you might book a meeting, but you're still going to have that buying procedure of I've got to go through this process. Does it tick every box? Whereas lipstick's just lipstick, and it costs like £5. If you buy it and you don't like it, it's not the end of the world. If you end up spending £200,000 on a piece of software that doesn't do what it's meant to do or breaks or whatever else, that's a very different purchase, and people are wary of that. And so, and I think also a lot of the audience on LinkedIn are a lot more. They're more. I don't want to use the word educated because that would be incorrect. Let me think. I would say that the people that hang around on
Savvy
LinkedIn.
buyers,
Sorry.
more savvy buyers, would you
Yeah,
say? Or
more savvy buyers, right? Like, these people are high achieving VPs of sales or like CROs, marketers, CEOs, founders. Like, typically you're going to be able to see through the bullshit anyway, right? So are you going to be probably desensitized from day one, but it is going to make them think, I should, if this person is genuinely recommending this, I should have a look about it.
yeah,
And it's the same thing with the influencers. Like, there are 4 different buckets of influencers. So one of them just won't do it, like will refuse to do sponsored partnerships at all. Fair enough. The second group is, I will only back and work with products that I use, like, trust, whatever.
yeah,
And then the third is I will, I'll evaluate each one individually, try it out, and then I will promote it. And then the last one is like, I'll promote anything. And a lot, to be honest with you, a lot of that comes down to the copy that the individual writes. Like, I can I've done enough of these now that I can see when someone definitely uses a product and like really gets it and understands it, versus that fourth bucket where they're just thinking, oh, I'm just gonna put a screen grab up and say, like, everyone should check this
yeah.
out.
It depends. Yeah, and that's a nice segue, right? So it's like, I'll come on to that. If I was a founder or a VP of marketing, sales, and I'm starting to toy with the idea of using influencers. We're talking B2B now. How would you, and obviously they should go and reach out to you naturally. But let's say that they weren't, right? They were just wanting to dip the toes before they kind of go full hog and kind of to use you. Where does one start with thinking, planning, and then executing on an influencer campaign?
One of the things that I think people underestimate about running this is the time investment. And I don't just mean sourcing and matching, which is hard enough as it is, and very
Yeah.
time consuming. I mean helping do the content collaboration, campaign strategy, doing the legals, doing the payments, doing feedback sessions, getting them involved in creative marketing and like analyzing their previous posts and like copy that's maybe on their company's website. It's a lot. I spoke to a marketer the other day where they said that they have two other people in their marketing team. They don't use us. They have a team of about 25 different influencers. And I said, how much time does this take you? And she said, it's about 20% of my marketing team's time is just on that one channel. If you think about how much other stuff a marketer does. So that's the first thing is like, if you're going to do this, I'll tell you how to do it. And I'm happy to share like the method. But the first thing is if you don't allocate the time, one, you won't be successful. And two is you will burn bridges. And if you burn bridges with an influencer, guess what? These people are influential. Your name can get damaged in the process. And I've seen it happen.
Mm,
So just
yeah.
that's my warning to your listeners. Just be tentative before you do this
It's a
approach.
good point. I never really thought about that.
The second thing that you need to be wary of is uh, a there's different levels to a relationship with a influencer. Um, One that people sometimes come to us to talk about is I just want to give these guys affiliate links. They post about products. We give them some form of kickback. Very few influencers will do that unless they really, really like your brand. So if you have a personal relationship with some of them, they might be willing to do that just because. But the majority of the ones that you probably want to work with in your industry will want some sort of monetary payment. The other thing is lots of these guys, lots of people who've tried this the first time, they just pay for like one post as
Yeah.
a one-off. Maybe it does okay, maybe it does badly, and then they never reinvest into it. And the way that you start is you would identify, let's say, a list of 50 individuals that you think are good fit influencers. Don't bother trying to get someone like John Barrows unless you are a Salesforce or like some very reputable company.
Right.
He gets harassed like crazy. Like Jason Bay is another one. Just there are some people I just really wouldn't waste your time. They are exceptionally hard to get hold of. Some of the bigger people are actually very nice and happy to have a conversation with you. They'll probably politely reject you. Like the people who are anywhere from 50 to 100 plus or in that region are typically capped out on brand partnerships,
Yeah.
which is when they will work with only five brands, and they do this retainer model, and it's like a really deep partnership, and so on and so forth. So don't waste your time there. You want to be looking for people with 5 to about 35k, maybe a 40,
Micro
45.
influencers.
Yeah, get your list of 50, and you message them and you say, "Hey, I'm Hector. I work from Fluenza. Are you open to doing sponsored content? We're happy to pay you on a post basis." The other thing you need to be aware of is like the length of the contract. So as I said, like lots of these guys, especially go higher up, will not do one-off posts because you won't get they may not get the results in just one-off posts. If the algorithm has an off day, which does happen, like if you read this stuff about like LinkedIn algo, it does
Yeah.
have shit fits. It is true. So
I've
yeah,
seen it.
yeah, exactly. And so what you want to do is mess with them, and they say sure. Next thing is get an agreement. You can Google. You can use a B2C template. There's lots of B2C influencer templates. This is to protect you and them. One, so they get paid. Two, so they don't do anything stupid, like say something racist, sexist. Not that they would, they're professionals, but like just in case the worst happens, get a legal agreement in place. Then the final piece is the content collaboration process, which is when you want to work with these guys on a campaign. If they've never heard of your product before,
Mm.
you've got to be the guiding light and don't tell them what to write, but say like post one, let's try, ask the influencer, have you ever had issues with any of these things? And they say yes. And say, okay, cool. Can we talk about that experience you've just described to me and weave in this specific feature and how it fixes that?
Yeah.
That's a easy first post. You will want to do this across I would say like a good test is probably 5 influencers running for a 3 month period.
Okay.
Do the help them do the content. After each set of posts, you want to try and categorize the kind of copy into, is it a how-to guide? Is it a list? Is it a graphic? Is it a video?
Right.
Then on your next set of posts, evaluate them all against one another, and then redirect the other influencers. Say, hey, Max had the best post out of our group of 5. He wrote about a personal story in conjunction with a how-to guide. Can we all try doing this next time? Here are some more features or how-tos that you can
Nice.
incorporate. And you just keep iterating on this process.
Yeah, you're tuning in.
Exactly, yeah. So, but that's just kind of the brand awareness side. And you probably get, I don't know, it really depends on your product and company, but hypothetically, let's say you'd get 10 MQLs per set of posts that you do. The way that you amplify this is that you take all the comments and reactions, enrich it with Triggerify. There you go. And send these people an email and say, hey, I saw you wrote about or commented or liked Max's post.
Yeah.
Are you interested in like data enrichment or anything like that? Really light touch, doesn't have to be anything crazy.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. And you've
So
got
you're not
24
necessarily
hours.
thinking about that influencer driving people to the product. Well, you are, but also then the secondary part is like, well, any engagement that influencer gets, then we all kind of go outbound to those individuals and then try and convert them, because that should in theory be a warmer lead based on them liking that particular post.
Exactly. So and you have 24 hours to do that as well. So you've got to get your sales team's time on board as well. And then you have a really fun discussion about, well, is this, it's marketing budget, but the salespeople are spending their time doing it. Whose revenue is this? Answer is always marketing.
Yeah.
If I was a salesperson, I'd obviously say the other side, but
Naturally.
yeah.
Why 24? Is it just because it's hot? Like that's when it's like primed?
Can you remember every post that you've liked in the last 24 hours?
Man, I can't even remember what I did 5 minutes ago, let alone.
Yeah, my point exactly. Right, you've got an awareness cycle of about 24 hours, and then it's not dead in the water, but you are so much further down that priority list.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This also goes back to the time thing. It's like it's not just marketing; it's sales. So I'd say that's like the base level test to set up your business influencer marketing team. So just to kind of summarize is source those 50 people, a bunch will not get back to you, get your agreements for your 5, run a 3 month campaign, pay them for three times 5, so like 15 individual payments. I mean, it depends how much you want to spend, but it can vary a lot. So I'm not going to put a number to it. Optimize for different kind of contents and keep testing. Amplify the results of your campaign by getting data, messaging people directly, and then if it works, double down and scale. If you're going more advanced in down this session, you start considering things like, okay, well, when's our next product release? When is our next webinar? Like, are we going to drive signups to it? Are we doing events in person? And you start planning it in conjunction with your wider marketing strategy. Then the phase after that is you start getting your customers involved. And the phase after that is if you really seeing it working and you get a person to on full time to do this, is I spoke to one company and they work with 1,500 different influencers. Every month they have 200 posts going out, and it was my mind was blown. They built their own algorithms to do attribution, because the trouble that a lot of our customers have, which we help with, is attribution. Like, how can I tell that this specific influencer or this campaign has equated to this much revenue and everything else? You can use UTM links, you can use dedicated landing pages, you can use like a tick box on a form. You can get your sales team to ask on demos where they heard about you. There's a bunch of different ways. It's like anything in marketing, it's never going to be 100%, and the best you can get is maybe 80 to measure that impact. But you can go really deep into this as a topic, which is also what part of the reason I started building a company, because it's genuinely very interesting, especially from a sales background.
Yeah, but it is really it is really challenge. Like, funny enough, we're trying to do, not from an influencer standpoint, but I think I get close to 4 meetings a day from my LinkedIn, and we only know this now because we've just well, we've done two things, right? We can track it going onto our onto our website, and then two, onto like the Calendly. We put a little drop down, but you still don't know. Well, like, two things: you still don't know if they've come from a specific post, because like the attribution on Google Analytics just says LinkedIn, not Max's LinkedIn. And then once you start adding links to post, that devalues the post. So you can't really add like UTM, like, or you shouldn't really be adding like a UTM link on an actual post.
It removes
Um,
about 15% of impressions, roughly. It's it's
yeah, it's a
punishment.
killer. Yeah, exactly. And then I feel like if you were posting, like, doing UTM links, it comes across as too obvious of a post. And I mean, personal preference, I prefer like a softer influencer post, like that is a little bit more like in depth, and less like, hey, like, try my product. So yeah, the tracking part, I'd imagine, is super hard, because it's not like Instagram or TikTok where you can really kind of basically pinpoint it to who it is. Like, LinkedIn doesn't really allow that. Like, that's the challenge with doing like B2B on LinkedIn. Why would I? Let's pick Triggerfy. Okay, we use this as an example. Why would I use like maybe 50 micro influencers versus I'm going to do like a brand deal for 6 months with these 5 core influencers? Like, what decision path should I be thinking? Should I start with either or, do both? Like, why would you pick either one?
You're ultimately trying to find brand evangelists, which is why you do this experimentation phase. And after that 3 month period is when you start doing a 12-month brand deal. For people that perform well, good at advocating for your brand, their personal stock is rising. So what I mean by that is, you know, I've just hit 60,000 followers on LinkedIn. I was at 12,000 last year, around that ish. So now my brand value is higher than it was a year ago. And being able to see that an individual is in the up and up and their growth is, if you lock them in for a 12-month brand deal, you're going to grow with them. And ultimately, you're going to, in
Yeah,
your example, you're going to go from 4 demos a day to 6 demos a day in 3 months, and
it's huge.
maybe 8 demos a day. And so that testing and experimentation is really important. And the makeup of your brand evangelist team, um, I don't have a defined answer for this. Like, some people with 100K followers we work with, they post about something, gets 300 likes, one person might sign up. But then we'll try another campaign with them, and the next brand will get 50 signups or more.
Mm.
And I mean, being
Well,
honest, this is part of the
doesn't
reason they
sound
work
like
with us, is because this matching thing is really hard. Like,
yeah,
it's not easy at all. And so we use a lot of different data points to identify who is a good fit for your brand.
yeah. Well, like a 300,000 follower profile might just be completely fucking pointless to who
I'm
you
not
are.
going to name names, but there are some people who have 500,000 followers and 40% are in India, and just like,
Mm,
millions of reactions. But if you go through the reactions, it's all trash.
yeah, it's purchased, would you say?
There's a lot of botting. There's a lot of like, there's stuff like auto liking pods. There's a lot of nefarious things that go on in this space. As I said, these are also influencers. So if I name names or like fire shots, it will come back and bite me in the ass. So I'm not
I won't
gonna.
get you to go there. Not yet.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, spend more time than you think researching.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially if
Okay.
someone's saying pay me 5 grand a post, like, just make sure you're spending time
What is the
wisely.
most that you've seen someone demand?
Demand or get paid, because that's two different things.
Let's do both.
Demand. I don't know if I could say this because if the person watches this, they'll figure out that it's them.
All right,
Um, I'll
give me a range.
change the number. I'm going to change the numbers so that I've got a way of saying it without them, that individual, potentially working out how it is. Um, so it's not necessarily it's about the amount of money, but it's what you get for that money based off their
Yeah.
audience and stuff that I think is just so head in the clouds. So they asked for $12,000 for 6 months for 3 pieces of content. Yeah. So
Roughly what, 5 to 10,000 followers, 10 to 20,000.
let like 20 to 40, and
So
the
not freaking huge.
and what's yeah, not freaking huge. And the other thing is someone has paid them for it. Two different brands have paid them this amount, which makes them think they're now
Worth that
worth
amount.
that amount of money. But that's in my opinion, we pay people as much as that. Okay, you have to put in more work, but as much as that, more consistently over a longer period of time, and actually more money now I think about it. Like one individual we work with is probably making close to 10K a month from us, and
Yeah.
they have to do quite a lot of work and copying. There's a lot of different brands they're working with, but that's across a year. Like that's another salary that
Yeah.
they're being able to do it rather than holding out for this once every 9 months. I might get one of these crazy contracts because I sucker in a demand gen who's just raised
Oh,
a
yeah,
bazillion
yeah,
dollars and
yeah.
needs to spend it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so that's yeah. So that's both someone who maybe has their head in the clouds, and we also when people sign up with us as an influencer sign up with us, we say like you're on the higher end, you're on the lower end. The other thing, it goes the other way too, is like if I think someone is undervaluing, I'll be like, you should ask for more money than
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because we want to try and we don't want anyone to devalue their brand, but we also know what is going to get people contracts, which is ultimately why you sign up. I think that's
Yeah.
the other point.
Yeah. Okay. And let's talk about the channels, like the mediums. So obviously we've been pretty much just talking about LinkedIn here. B2B. So like we have a TikTok. That's pretty shit, to be honest. We have an Instagram account. Um, Really, what we're doing is stuff like this indicates down to these. They're not like our focus channels. But I'm sure there are B2B brands that kind of focus on there. But I don't know. I mean, like, what is your thoughts on? And let's keep it B2B. Using Instagram influencers or TikTok or YouTube versus obviously LinkedIn, which is the most obvious one for kind of B2B.
Instagram, don't bother. X or
Oh yeah, X.
sorry, just because I'm not the biggest Elon fan, I'll call it Twitter. So Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok are the three most relevant ones. And then you have things like podcasts, newsletters, like obviously like
Yeah,
Lenny's newsletter, unbelievable reach and great CTR from
yeah,
what I've read.
yeah. Interesting.
But if I'm specifically thinking about TikTok, I can't remember what her name is, but there's an American VC who's got maybe 250,000 followers and does kind of VC-esque memes. Um, and she gets a lot of her deal flow from TikTok because guess what? Like the next generation of
Mm,
entrepreneurs are on
that makes sense.
TikTok. So she's getting these, yeah, MIT kids who flick through TikTok, want to start a company. They'll reach out to her and say, yeah, we're looking for funding.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, funny enough, we actually have. I mean, our TikTok's performing badly, like our personal page, but just randomly, Hugo, our co-founder, he's got like 150,000 followers on TikTok, and we get meetings. Yeah, yeah, it's quite a random. He's called Mr. Trading Robot. He did financial advice for like during the COVID period, and it just blew up. And we've been slowly trying to change his audience towards more trigger orientated sales marketing thing, but we do get meetings through there, so it's not. And one thing that always surprises me is you've actually got CEOs, founders of pretty decent companies sitting on TikTok as well.
Everyone needs to watch something on the loo.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. What about dark social? I love the idea, and I don't know. I've never done it. I've never really heard of anyone doing it, but like one of the concepts that I had was like, oh, hey, I'm going to go out, and there's obviously all these WhatsApp groups and Slack groups out there now. And it's like, pay a bunch of people, like anytime someone asks, like, hey, has anyone come across a tool that does this? Like, I'll have like my little agents inside these WhatsApp groups, and basically they mention Triggerfy, and then they kind of get like a pay every time that they kind of reference, and they can kind of, it's harder to track because you can't see it, but they can take a screenshot and like do it. Have you come across anyone doing any like dark social
It's
influencer stuff?
yeah. I've seen people sponsor communities, like that's relatively common, but I would say that's more road mapped,
Yeah,
specifically things like WhatsApp groups and smaller Slack groups. We thought about it, but the tracking
yeah, it's pretty
attribution just becomes like insane. It's better to, I think it's better to get those individuals posting and then get them to repeat the same kind of posting that they put in
in
professional
the group.
channels in those WhatsApp groups. Um, and then do it that way round. Because I think the other thing is in most dark, I don't know about you, but in the dark social groups that I'm part of, people are quite ruthless or like rude in a good way, in my opinion.
Yeah,
In
and a
terms of like
constructive. Yeah,
no one's trying to flog you some crap and like just be a bit sleazy. And as soon as anyone is, everyone jumps on them as like kick this guy out. He's yeah, he's not worth it. So I question how well it would work, I think is what I'm getting at, before you even get to the attribution piece.
yeah, that's interesting. Um, and then you mentioned something earlier, right, which was around like doing like in person stuff with influencers. What does that actually look like?
What, there's a couple of examples which people have told me about. Is there was someone that is a influencer and they were doing a enterprise sales deal, and they got a neutral party who the purchasing company knew to come and give a workshop to the people about the product that they were buying. That individual is an influencer and was paid to do that, and so was very much on the side of the company, of the seller.
Yeah,
The other thing is keynotes, getting people to talk at roundtables, hosting events where that influencer is like the
yeah,
face of the event. There's a lot of different ways that you can work with them. I
yeah,
think one thing which I don't know if any, I'm probably said this way too late. I'm becoming more and more passionate about as I hear more horror stories from influencers that we work with. Um, and this, sorry about sounding a bit cheesy and lame, but these are still people, they're not products. like like don't just treat them as like your media marketing machine. Like
yeah,
they hate it, and also you won't get as good a results from them. And also you shouldn't be partnering with someone who you don't like working with anyway if you see them as
yeah,
just a kind of a robot. um, and actually some of the best marketing programs that I've seen from bigger companies, where they've only got maybe 30 or 40 influencers, but they always go to dinner together, they fly them out, they get stash, they take an active interest in one another's lives, and getting them really amped up about a brand and behind it gets such good results.
yeah.
And so yeah, for anyone who wants to go down this path and have a go at building your influencer team, yeah, just remember it's people.
Yeah. And I guess then to wrap it up on that note, like, because one of the things that I think we've alluded to at the very first part, which my whole goal is not to be super fluffy with these podcasts, is you mentioned like you should pull a list of like 50 influencers and start there and message them. How do you actually physically pull that list? Like, what would you do to go and get a list like that?
Google top 100 PPC influencers.
Right. Okay. And there's usually lists out there of people who've pulled it together.
It is harder for different industries, specializations. In using sales as an example, there are lots of brands which have messaged these sales influencers and create quite bad reputations. So you have to be quite tentative when you're approaching them. Um, when we started, LinkedIn actually had a way of searching by topic, and so it's actually really easy to find them. But LinkedIn has changed the way that platform is structured, and so actually it's much, much, much harder to do influencer acquisition. It requires a lot of research, which is again one of the reasons that people use us, because we've built some things that help us do it at scale.
Yeah.
But if I were just your average Tom, Dick, and Harry, have a Google, see people come up in your feed, to save them in an Excel spreadsheet, and then one afternoon just spend the time just knock through them.
Smashing through the list. Yeah, nice. All right. Well, listen, man, I know that we're going to certainly use you at some point down the line once we're ready for some influences. So I'm excited for that because I've got some exciting ideas with how we could leverage it. But
Yeah.
thanks for coming on, mate, and appreciate it.
Not at all. Anytime, Max. Thanks. Have a good one.